I don't really need to be a student guy, sorry.
May I go there?
No, go down and you can
Ah.
go up over there.
For me?
Start downstairs.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I want to say application.
See ya.
Oh. Captain's stateroom, the captain's room, the single bed by himself. It's
Looks complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
I'm guessing. Oh, this is your communication thing. Send messages. Yeah, all your fuses.
The tubes.
Yeah. Here's the listen message. It's a place to be, man.
Look at that.
Whole bar mixer.
Damn it.
There's one of the shells for the deck gun. And cribbage. Oh. They're probably valves. Alright, now we're in
Oh shit! It's unscrewing something.
Yeah, this is kind of actually pretty similar to how I went to sleep. Ours are a little bit different now, but it's pretty close. At least as far as quarters go. Because I slept in the bottom one. Everyone always wanted this one. The middle one is the best
Had you
one.
been in a submarine?
No, I was on a carrier.
Oh. Amazing.
Yeah, the newer ones you get a little bit more. Like they're coffin beds, so they're like this, and they're a little bit higher. So this one would be about here, and then there, and you could lift it up, and then they had storage underneath.
Ooh,
for
wow.
that.
Thank you for your service.
Oh, look at that. Besides yeah.
Look at that hair. Look at that. Look at that beard. That majestic beard.
Yeah, right.
Well, they even have a color on just to get the fuckers in there.
Yeah. I'm the only one how much to do it.
It seems like short flats.
Submarine. I boarded here the submarine that goes inside the sea. I'm Cozumel and here in Honolulu.
Wow.
Nice. But this one, ooh, heritage.
This is fancy.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. It looks quite very complicated.
It does look very complicated.
Yes.
If you understand it, yeah, I wouldn't be able to understand it. I
Yep.
grew up on a farm, so I definitely wouldn't understand it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
your photos here?
No, I have my own camera. Thank you.
Oh, run back.
There? Thank you.
We just started.
No, he just got ahead of me.
I suppose we can kind of clump together a little bit more in this area, kind of
down a little bit when we come together. But we're going to keep this walkway here clear because it's a fire hazard. Yep, perfect. Now, folks, we're going to flash back to September 2nd, 1945. I'm going to tell you about this photo here behind me. Now, it is an overcast Sunday in Tokyo Bay, Japan, and the USS Missouri sits in her waters. Now, on board the Missouri, officers stand in their assigned positions as the Japanese delegation board the ship. Now, after the arrival of all the Japanese delegates, 3 men would emerge from the admiral's quarters: General Douglas MacArthur, Admiral Chester Nimitz, and Admiral William Halsey. They would emerge from behind that white canvas, descend those steps, and take their places where you're standing now. Now, the ceremony would begin at 9:02 in the morning with a brief opening from MacArthur. And in his speech, he would choose not to speak ill will or violence against the Japanese. But instead, he would choose to speak of freedom, justice, and tolerance. Now, these words were met with great relief by the Japanese delegation, and also great respect, especially by number 27 in the photo, Mr. Toshikazu Kase. He was the English translator from the Japanese delegation. And he was actually the only person on board that day that spoke both English and Japanese. Now, when it came time to sign the documents, MacArthur would call over to number 22, Foreign Minister Shigemitsu, and number 24, General Umezu, to sign for Japan's unconditional surrender. So the first person to sign would be the Foreign Minister, and he would sign on behalf of Emperor Hirohito. Second person to sign would be General Umezu, who would sign for the Imperial Army. The third person to sign would be MacArthur himself, who is pictured as number 1, sitting at the table. And he would sign as the Supreme Commander of the Allied Powers. Now, on this day, MacArthur would use 6 pens to sign the 2 copies of the Instrument of Surrender. 2 of those pens he would donate to the 2 men standing behind him. Now, on this day, both of those men stood at over 6 feet tall, but neither of them weighed close to 100 pounds. Now, number 2 in the photo is Lieutenant General Jonathan Wainwright, who was captured in Frigador. And number 3 in the photo is British Lieutenant General Arthur Percival, who was captured in Singapore. Now, the typical lifespan for a prisoner of war in the Pacific was less than 6 months. But both of those men endured more than 3 years. And they had been released days prior to the ceremony. They were there to represent all prisoners of war during the conflict. Now, continuing with the signing process, the fourth person to sign would be Admiral Chester Nimitz, who would sign for the United States. Following him would be representatives from China, Great Britain, the Soviet Union, Australia, Canada, France, the Netherlands, and then New Zealand in that order. The ceremony that began at 9:02 would conclude at 9:25. It would take only 23 minutes to end World War II. A war in which over 69 million lives were lost. And that's a rough estimate from the European and Pacific theater. And 50 million of those casualties were civilians. Now, the plaque enshrined in the teak deck not only represents where the table stood that day, but it is also to commemorate all the lives lost for victory and peace. Now, following the ceremony, MacArthur had one more speech left to give. He had to inform the American public of the news. And since it was the 1940s, his message would be broadcasted over the radio, and he would speak these infamous words. Today, the guns are silent. A great tragedy has ended. A great victory has been won. The skies no longer rain death. The seas bear only commerce. Men everywhere walk upright in the sunlight. The entire world lies quietly at peace. And that would be the conclusion of World War II. So I'll give you folks a few minutes to look around, take some photographs. In the plexiglass case is a replica copy of the Instrument of Surrender, and that open doorway is a peek inside the captain's import cabin. And I'll be around if you have any questions. So one way to and then there's just a record.
That's why they came out of there.
So that's actually a replica copy of 1853 very special. So 1853 is significant because that is the year the U.S. first opened. So we had the original flag there that day to represent us getting back to being allies and trade. And that's why there's only 31 stars. It's right after California became a state.
So there were 31 at this time.
In 1853.
So California has become a state at the time.
So this is a replica copy of the 1853 Commodore Perry's flag. That's the year the U.S. first opened trade. So we had the original flag there that day that represent us getting back to being allies and trade. That's $5.
Okay, good job, Lawrence. There's some room too on this bench. Anybody wants to have a seat on the bench? If you're wondering what's going on behind us, or behind me, in front of you, that's our fantail. So we use that for military ceremonies nowadays, re-enlistments, retirements, promotion. You can also rent out the fantail to wine and dine on the Missouri as well. Right now, it's a military ceremony. I believe it's a promotion right now. So anyway, welcome to the Kamikaze Deck, also known as the Kamikaze Attack Site. So we're first going to begin with the word kamikaze. Now, typically people think that kamikaze means suicide bomber, but the word actually translates to divine wind. And the story behind kamikaze dates all the way back to 1274, when the Mongolians built up their fleet to try and conquer Japan. However, before they got there, they were wiped out by a massive typhoon. Now the Mongolians would try again 7 years later. Unfortunately for them, they would be wiped out by a second great typhoon. So the Japanese people thought that this was some sort of divine intervention that had saved them. So that's where we get the word kamikaze from. Now we're going to take our timeline towards the end of World War II. At this point, the Japanese military has suffered several critical defeats. They are rapidly losing the industrial capacity to keep fighting. However, the Japanese government is still reluctant to surrender. So they think they can reincarnate this idea of kamikaze by utilizing young Japanese men. With very little training, they would put them on a plane with a bomb and tell them to do as much destruction as possible. And in the process, they would end up losing their life. So that's where we get that connotation of suicide bomber from. Now, we would first see kamikaze tactics used in October 1944 at the Battle of Leyte. And they would continue on into Okinawa in 1945. And and it would be at Okinawa that the U.S. Navy would have their greatest loss in the Pacific War with Japan. They would lose 34 ships. And on the Japanese side, they would sacrifice almost 4,000 kamikaze pilots. Now we're going to take our timeline to April 11th, 1945. The USS Missouri is offshore the island of Okinawa, supporting the invasion. When at 2:43 in the afternoon, a lone pilot is spotted. Now while this pilot is flying through the air trying to dodge anti-aircraft fire, he steers his plane over to the starboard side of the Missouri. Now on the middle storyboard that we passed on the way in, you'll be able to see a photo that was taken seconds before the plane hit the side of the ship. Now remarkably, the bomb that the pilot was carrying never detonated. It fell harmlessly into the ocean with the majority of his plane. However, the right wing was sheared off, and it landed on the deck. It spread aviation fuel everywhere, and it started a massive fire. The rest of the fleet thought the Missouri was going down, but the fast-acting crew put that fire out in less than 3 minutes, and there were no casualties among the Missouri's crew that day. The only casualty would be the kamikaze pilot himself. He had been thrown from his plane, and his body would land on the deck. Now, his body would be removed to the dispensary for identification, but he would later be ID'd as Petty Officer, 2nd Class, Setsuo Ishino. He was 19 years old.
Oh, here we go.
Now, as an act of humanity, Captain Callaghan would order for a burial at sea for the young man. He was no longer a threat. He was another casualty of war. So 3 signal corpsmen would work through the night, and they would sew together a makeshift Japanese flag to put over his body. And the next morning, a bugler would play taps, a chaplain would say a prayer, he would have a 15-gun salute by the Marines, and 6 pallbearers would lower his body into the Tokyo Bay. And that is what the footprints that we passed on the way in are to represent. Now, normally a story like this would be front page news. However, his death was overshadowed by another's. April 12, 1945, the American public had just received the news. The death of President Franklin D. Roosevelt. And the man to succeed him would be none other than Harry S. Truman. So that brings our story full circle. Harry S. Truman was born and raised in the state of Missouri, and his daughter Mary Margaret christened this ship. So when it came time for him to select a ship for the surrender ceremony to take place, what ship do you think he would choose? None other than the Missouri. That is actually the only reason why the surrender ceremony took place on our very deck. Now before you folks go, on the other side of this half-dome structure here is going to be a door. That is your entrance down to our second deck. That is the museum portion of our ship. That is also the air-conditioned portion. So please enjoy it for me, and you can thank President Ronald Reagan for the AC.
Thank you.
If you folks need to use the restroom, women's restroom is going to be on this side underneath the basketball hoop. Men's restroom's on this side. That's also where the water fountain is. So, on behalf of the USS Missouri Memorial Association, I want to thank you all for joining me today. We are a non-profit. We don't get any funding by the government. It's your ticket sales and your donations that keep us afloat. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
特殊年轻的中国主义这个惯性来为国捐躯，有的